All right. So one of the more recent changes in curriculum, stems around what a lot of people have dubbed as the new math. And I know there's a lot of funny memes and jokes out there that are saying how, backwards the new math is and how strange it is. But coming from a high school math teacher, who's looked through the curriculum, the gamut of the curriculum, all the way from, pre-K up through, to me, it's where we need to be. So, I don't want to lecture parents, who have been critical of the math, and that's not where I think any of us need to be. I think what we need to do is educate each other and, not necessarily let me as the math teacher tell you what to do and why to believe that this is the best way to be, just to understand that the point of the Common Core structure changes for math, especially at the primary grades, is to have a conceptual approach to learning rather than processes and memorization. So if you think back to, your earliest experiences in math, and this is kind of going deep for some people, but, even me, who admittedly loves math and has really positive experiences throughout most of her math life, I can pinpoint the age at which, I distinctly remember having stress and anxiety about math, and it's first and second grade when time tests showed up. So time tests required a child to, flat out memorize mathematical facts and regurgitate them back very quickly in random orders. And you had to be able to match, this picture with this picture, essentially, because that's what a math fact was to most kids, was a picture to a picture. And I didn't realize it until I was an adult, but I suffer from some pretty significant dyslexia. And as a child, I could not match the pictures. I could not figure out the math fact just from flat memorization. So I developed conceptual understanding of the math facts just out of sheer necessity to make it through my course, because I also was a people pleaser, a teacher suck up, and I wanted to get that good grade. So I kind of figured it out on my own. It is definitely not the way we were taught. I'm old school. I am the flashcard queen, a math fact memorization, time test, times tables, when you get to that age. And I think that's the way a lot of us were brought up. So when your young child comes home with homework and your teacher is asking you to help them arrange this math fact in a different way so that they can conceptualize the math fact, the parents are going, why? Why can't they just memorize that 8 plus 7 is 15? Why is that so stinking hard? Why do they have to do it a different way? What's this new math? Why are they making us do it? And I'll discuss that briefly here. So the new way, which is, frankly, from a math standpoint, the best way, is to conceptualize your learning in math. And there's a lot of, in the textbook that I'm using for my course, Mathematical Mindset by Dr. Joe Bowler, there's a lot of talk about brain research and what allows the brain to do what's called compression of topics, and it has to be learned conceptually in order to compress. So if you go and you look at what we consider low-achieving math students and high-achieving math students and ask them how they approached questions, the most prominent difference between the two is that a low-achieving math student will generally always approach math questions with procedure and process and memorization. And a high-achieving math student has more flexibility and fluency within the math, and they approach it with a conceptual approach. So there's a lot of visualization. They can look at it from two different ways, which, as math teachers, we're like, yeah, that's absolutely a high skill. But that's something that we can foster, all the way down to your pre-K years. And that's what they're trying to foster now with our new curriculum. So whenever parents ask me, what's this new math? How do you feel about it? And why do you feel that way? This is the best example I can come up with. And I'm sure there's better ones out there on the internet. So go ahead and look it up. But the idea is, if I gave my, he just got out of kindergarten. That was him. My 6-year-old just came out of kindergarten, and they did a lot of work with what's called a 10 frame in kindergarten. And it looks just like this, where they, I made up this example, but, we could roll a 10-sided dice. They might start with regular ones at first, but a 10-sided dice, and, he would roll an 8, and then he would take a stamper, and he would stamp 8 little marks in the 10 frame. And he would be looking at this and going, he'd start putting some facts together. He'd say, oh, well, it's not quite filling up the 10 frame. There's still 2 empty ones, so 8 must be 2 away from 10. Eventually, the fact of 8 plus 2 equals 10 shows up in his curriculum. If, they're advanced enough, they'll have the child look at this as 10 minus 2 equals 8, or 10 minus 8 equals 2. And to really start to build up the math fact in a base 10 number system, which, I go on and on in my algebra classroom about why we're a base 10 number system, but essentially, guys, it's your fingers, right? So if you think about a small child, they do a lot of finger counting, which I'm going to be honest, I thought my kids weren't supposed to do because that's the way I was raised. Turns out that's not right. You're allowed to finger count. You're supposed to encourage your child to finger count. We'll talk about that another time. So moving on in the kindergarten years, they might give them 2 10 frames, and then they might roll 2 dice. Maybe they'll be 2 different colors or something. So the child rolls an 8 and then stamps out 8 red ones, and then the child will roll a 7. And then they'll continue on in the tens frame where they were, right? So they'll take 2 from that 7, and they'll fill in the original 10 frame, and that's, let's see if my pen will work here. Boop, boop, boop. There we go. So this 7, they're basically going to break, oh gosh, golly. It's just like I'm in class again. All right. So they're going to break this 7. They're going to take 2 of them and fill in this tens frame. And then there's those extra 5, right, that are left over for the next 10 frame. So the child can quickly visualize, okay, I took 2 of them to fill in the 10, and then I have 5 more, so 8 plus 7 is really going to be a 15. And I know parents are looking at this and going, why is that easier? Why is that better? And the reason why this method is better for your child's development is because they can start realizing, like, okay, it's my job to make this math problem build up into something that I can easily visualize. And in a base 10 number system, counting up to 10 is not difficult, right? It's not really that hard to do. Well, this is why it's better. Because what happens when your child gets 89 plus 25 when they're in 2nd grade? Now, there's the old school approach where you would line up the digits, 89 plus 25, you'd add up the ones, and then you'd do some regrouping. And there's nothing wrong with that as far as like just getting the right answer. What's wrong with that approach is that it doesn't allow the child to compress that skill and then extend it to any other skills in math. This is like a very singular skill. I was talking to another adult one day and I said, the way I think of it is, let's say I want to be the best basketball player that my school's ever seen. So I'm going to practice a half-court shot all day, every day. And that is the only skill that I practice. Half-court shot, half-court shot, half-court shot, over and over and over again. And what happens is when I go to play a basketball game, I haven't practiced enough skills in a live sort of setting where I can make changes and adaptations to my surroundings. And I'm not very good at basketball. But I'm really good at a half-court shot. So if that happens to come up, I'm good. And I can replicate that. So the idea is in math, we want to promote that flexibility, that fluidity in math, and being able to take a skill like regrouping numbers in a better way. So for instance, you might be like, well, what is she talking about in this one? Because, I already have the answer. I've already put my 2 columns down, right? So what a child who can understand visualization and, regrouping in a way where you can conceptualize how to fill in this case, it's not a tens frame, but a hundreds frame. They would say, oh, I need 11 more to get this up to 100, right? So we'd split this off and make this 11 and 14. The 11 and 89, that's 100. So the answer must be 114. So that's how, it kind of surprised me as an adult that people didn't think that way, because for me, that's how I had to think of it. Because I had dyslexia and I couldn't memorize facts and I was really bad at processes, and I would, not really, if I didn't understand why the process worked, then it really didn't make any sense to me and it didn't stay in my brain and I wouldn't get it right. So that's the idea, guys. That's what we're trying to strive for with the kids. So when you hear someone say like, oh, this new math is just so terrible, why don't they just, have the kids memorize 8 plus 7 and just know it? Well, the reason is because it doesn't build up any skills for them for the future. So get on board with this new math, if you want to call it that. It is for the better, I promise.